All right. Hello and welcome to the 7th Annual King Talks. My name is Chloe Luyette, and for the next 24 hours at least, until my defense, I am a Ph.D. candidate in the Department of Chemical Engineering. I am also one of the speech coaches for our 7 speakers tonight. Our other coach, Aya Waller-Bay, couldn't be here with us in person today, so it's my pleasure to be your host for this evening. This year, the theme of the King Talks event is the 21st Century Struggle Transforming the Jangling Discords of Our Nation into a Beautiful Symphony, which is a line taken directly from MLK's I Have a Dream speech. And so this is for you, Paul, wherever you are. 7 speakers, 1 theme, 1 night. And on this night, our first speaker of the evening is the lovely Gabby Young. She is a Ph.D. in health behavior and health education in the School of Public Health. In her talk titled The Rhythm of Change, she explores hunger as a pressing yet solvable problem in the United States. Gabby believes that through intentional planning and collective action, the basic human right of access to food can be met. In her talk, she is going to walk us through how we can weave the jangling discords regarding food insecurity into the beautiful song of a fed nation. And some interesting facts about Gabby is that she ran the Disney Princess Half Marathon last year with her sister as Anna and Elsa. And she also listens to audiobooks on 2.5 speed. Please join me in welcoming Gabby.
It was put forth by those who founded this country that we were allotted certain inalienable rights. Food, the very life-giving substance that is abundantly wasted each year, is one of those rights. Yet millions go without it daily. In the US, there are approximately 49 million people who reported not having enough food or not knowing where their next meal would come from. This number includes 13 million children who went through their day with empty or close to empty bellies. Zooming in a bit, there are almost 1.2 million Michiganders who reported some level of food insecurity. To put this into perspective, starting with yourself, and for those joining us online, just kind of envision it. Count 8 people down your row. Now look at that 9th person. Representatively, they would be the one experiencing hunger in the group. We have failed to uphold food as a basic human right. Instead, nourishment has become about worthiness and self-determinism. It is time that we weave the jangling discords of our nation's ideology regarding food access into the beautiful symphony of a fed nation. Dr. King showed us that there are many tools for social justice advances. From hunger strikes to sit-ins, he showed us that acts of resistance makes waves. But there's nothing more impactful than the unifying effect of music. Through music, we've been able to express joy, pain, determination. I think of James Brown's 1968 hit, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, where he conveys the truth of being Black in America while being unapologetically proud of who he is and stating he won't stop fighting until he gets what he deserves. Now, I don't stand before you today with the demo of the next social change hit, but I do hope you'll allow me to serve as a semi-composer to walk us through how we can change the chaotic noise about hunger into a beautiful rhythm. Now, when I think about this rhythm, this is what comes to mind. As you heard, there was a good tempo, a good balance between background and main vocals, and there was clarity of lyrics. But this isn't what comes to mind when I think about what we currently sound like. If I were being honest, this is what I get. Yeah, it's quite awful. By the end of my time before you this evening, I hope I can convince you that the chaotic noise that you heard before has the potential to sound like a beautiful rhythm. So, where do we begin? Well, first, we all need to be singing the same song. As we heard, when more than one song is playing at a time, again, it sounds like chaos and it's hard to focus. The same can be said when we're not unified in the song we sing about hunger. We get lost in mixed messaging and it dissuades people from wanting to engage. If we were to all sing the same song about hunger, it first and foremost needs to state that food is a basic human right, and thus we must prioritize meeting food needs. Now, I want to pause here and ask you a question. How many of you have volunteered or donated food to a food bank or food pantry? And for those of you online, feel free to jot it in the chat. This warms my heart. And how many of you have done those things outside of the holiday season? I am very proud. Unfortunately, that's not common across the country. Usually there's a lull in action to address hunger outside of the holidays. But what we must realize is that those who are hungry on December 25th are still hungry on December 26th. We have to realize that we have to be persistent in the song we sing about addressing hunger. Until the question of where someone's next meal will come from is a thing of the past, we have to keep saying we need to address hunger. So to recap, we're now all singing the same song, and we're singing the same song at the same time. But there's one more thing we need to do before we can hit record. Now, I can admit I am vocally challenged, and although I wish I could sing like Beyoncé, I cannot sing like, nor do I sound like Beyoncé. So how foolish would it be for me to take lead vocals from the legend herself? The same could be said about who takes the lead vocals when talking about hunger. Historically, our approaches to address hunger have been prescriptive, excluding the voices of those who have had food hardships. If we were to pass the mic, both figuratively and literally, to those with lived experiences, I am confident that we would be able to reach much more sustainable approaches to addressing it. We know that we need food to survive, and it has been shown that we need consistent access to food to thrive. But our country's current discord regarding food access means that so many of us are just one job loss, one missed paycheck, one medical emergency away from experiencing hunger ourselves. Now, as your food security composer, I hope I have showed you how certain changes could get us to this beautiful rhythm. I also hope that I've excited something in you to want to take action. Whether you're all in or you're just curious about how you can help move things forward, I want to leave you with 3 things that could make a world of difference. The first is to vote. Hunger is a systemic issue, and thus we must work at the level in which the system is being upheld. We need to make sure that those representing us in Washington are truly speaking about our needs. We need to make sure that they are saying hunger is an issue and we must address it and try to find a solution to it. The next is to stay informed. I'm not sure how many of you knew, but the Farm Bill, a large piece of legislation that has guided our nation's agricultural and food business since the 1930s, is up for reauthorization, and it's not looking good. Among other problematic provisions, it is being proposed that food assistance programs like food stamps and WIC receive a reduction in their funding. It's also being proposed that additional work requirements be added for those to qualify for such benefits. If passed, this would add to the already millions experiencing hunger. And yes, charitable food organizations are meeting huge needs, but they alone are not able to close the meal gap. We must ensure that federal assistance programs such as food stamps and WIC remain available and that they don't go underfunded. The third thing is to be vocal. I fail to accept that hunger is an unknown issue. Instead, I believe it's about the volume for the call for action. Whether you're on social media or you're a featured speaker, we all have an opportunity to say something about hunger. The Food Research and Action Center, Feeding America, and No Kid Hungry have a vast library of resources that you can utilize to craft your message. They also have linkages to local networks that are currently organizing to meet the food needs of your neighbors right now. Speaking of neighbors, at the beginning of my talk, I gave some frightening numbers about hunger in Michigan. But when we vote, when we stay informed, when we talk about hunger and become vocal, we again are acknowledging that food is a basic human right. And until that is the reality for our neighbors, we won't stop fighting for change. Hunger is a pressing but solvable problem. And it is my belief that when we sing the same song at the same time, with everyone singing their appropriate parts, we have the opportunity to create a masterpiece. And that is the rhythm of change. Thank you.
You know to bring some love here today. Yeah. Father.
Thank you, Gabby. Next up, we have Amna Rizvi Toner, a pharmacist by training, but also a Ph.D. candidate in the Clinical Pharmacy Translational Science program. Although her dissertation research focuses only on improving cancer care, she hopes to work toward improving health care for all. And so in her talk titled More Than Skin Deep, Racism in Healthcare, she explores how healthcare disparities continue to persist despite widespread awareness. Racism is detrimental to the health of Americans, but the way in which it appears is not always obvious. The COVID-19 pandemic shed light on many examples of systemic racism, including previously unknown and seemingly innocuous sources of harm. Amna's talk will present one of these cases in detail alongside relevant political and historical context. But some interesting facts about Amna is that in 2022, she knocked on over 3,000 doors in the last election cycle to advocate for reproductive rights, and she also enjoys buying books she doesn't have time to read. Please join me in welcoming Amna.
Thanks, Chloe. Okay, so let's go back to the end of the world. It's March 2020, and the world has come to a halt. Obviously, America has as well. Some of you Michiganders might recall receiving this public safety alert on your phone where we were told to stay at home to prevent the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Stay home, stay safe, save lives. We were told this repeatedly. As the pandemic grew on and the cases surged, we stayed in isolation and watched horrifying news around the clock. We saw the rise in cases lead to the possible rationing of medical equipment and the actual rationing of medical equipment. We saw arguments about who should get this medical equipment that can save lives. And we kept seeing hospitalizations rise. They rose so much, both the hospitalizations and the deaths from COVID, that hospitals started to rely on refrigerated trucks to store the bodies. They had run out of space. The city of Detroit had one of those hospitals that used refrigerated trucks as standing morgues. So I'm going to pause here for a minute, and ask you all to imagine that you are a person of color. Some of us don't have to imagine very hard. You're a person of color who develops COVID symptoms. You have a fever. Your throat hurts so bad that you feel like it's on fire. Your chest is so tight, you can't breathe. You drive yourself to the ER. It's crowded. It's busy. There's a lot of people there. The nurse comes and hurriedly places a pulse oximeter on your finger. When the reading flashes, she noticeably relaxes, and she hurries on to the next patient who needs her care. But you're sitting there still confused, still breathless, wondering what to do. Someone tells you, it's okay, you're not an urgent case. Your blood oxygen level wasn't high enough to warrant more care. You can go home. You think, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe it's all in my head. But you still can't breathe. So the next morning you wake up, your symptoms are worse. This time you have to call an ambulance. The ambulance comes, and your case now is deemed urgent. You're admitted to the intensive care unit, where along with the pulse oximeter that looks at your blood oxygen level, they also draw a sample of blood to test more accurately what the oxygen level in your blood is, finding out that it's actually very low, while the pulse oximeter still shows that your value is high and you don't need urgent care. The doctors are puzzled. But they say, it's okay, you're here now. We can give you the care that you need. But that information would have been nice yesterday and potentially saved you a trip to the ICU. So what's going on? Why can't you breathe? Researchers at the University of Michigan found that Black patients were 3 times more likely than white patients to have hidden levels of low oxygen in their blood when using pulse oximeters. Pulse oximeters, as I've mentioned, are these little devices that clip onto your finger. Some of you have probably used them before, and they display your blood oxygen level. However, the doctors finding this discrepancy noticed that when a more accurate test was taken, the elevated blood oxygen level showing that the patient was fine was actually incorrect, and the patient needed urgent care. So why is this important? It's important because during the pandemic, during the worst times, they needed to use a way to prioritize patients. Well, if your blood oxygen level was high enough on this pulse oximeter, then you were fine. You could go home. You didn't need to be admitted. You didn't need supplemental oxygen or to be monitored further under the care of a doctor and a healthcare team. But the problem is, for patients of color, their values were incorrect. They were being wrongly sent home. One of the researchers who published, now there's many studies that have been published talking about the death rates in patients of color due to this error. One of the researchers states that there's no doubt in her mind that patients were sent home to die from COVID-19 because of the pulse oximeter. So let's take a minute to back up and talk about how the pulse oximeter works. This clip has 2 lights that are shined through your finger, and the amount of light that is absorbed by your blood shows how much oxygen is in it, because oxygen is absorbed by hemoglobin, a protein in your blood. Well, guess what else absorbs the light? Melanin. And melanin is present in higher concentrations in people of color. So 1976. You might be wondering why we did not know about this problem before. Well, we did. 1976. Scientists had noted that the machine needed to be calibrated to patients of color, to people of color, in order to provide accurate results because melanin interferes with the absorption of the light. I'll do the math for you. 1976 was 44 years prior to 2020 and 48 years prior to today, 2024. So the question might not be, why was it not known? I think the question is, why was it not prioritized? Why did nothing change? Why did we not do anything to fix this problem before it became an even bigger problem and tragedy? So why? Well, one of the answers is systemic racism. Systemic racism encompasses many different levels of racism that can be institutional, interpersonal, internalized. I won't make you read the table, but essentially, systemic racism is present in medicine and in healthcare. It was present in the past, and it's present today, as we see with this example with the pulse oximeter. Systemic racism, in fact, is so embedded in systems that it's often assumed to reflect the natural, inevitable order of things. So I'd like to draw your attention to the red box there, January 18th, 2024, a little over a month ago. No progress has been made since all these research studies came out showing that it's an error that continues to take place in hospitals and critical patients, where nurses, physicians, different members of the healthcare team use that blood oxygen level to see how much care they need to provide, who they need to prioritize. Nothing has happened since. And now one of the physicians that was on the papers publishing about this problem is suing the developers of the device to see if we can get somewhere. But 2024. So I think there's really not much difference between the systemic racism that people of color experienced in the past from the systemic racism that they experience today. But I hope we've seen enough. And I hope that the first step everyone would agree on is to be more aware and to listen. So thank you for being here today and listening. And I would like to leave you with this quote: racism is not an event. As we've seen from COVID-19, other examples that maybe are more popular in school classes, it's not an event. It's not a singular instant or act. It's plural. It happens over time. It's a process. So thank you for being here to take one step towards doing something to reverse the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Amna. Up third, we have Penny Kitsopoulos. She's a fourth-year Ph.D. candidate in the Mechanical Engineering Department. In her talk, titled Designing Justice, she calls upon her fellow engineers to learn to design for all. Penny believes engineers should work for and with communities of all people to ensure that we have those communities' best interests at heart when making and creating our designs. She walks us through the Design Justice Network principles to help us rethink our approach to design and put the people who are traditionally marginalized and forgotten at the center of our designs. Penny was born and raised in the island of Crete in Greece. And another interesting fact is that she travels so often in a very engineer-like way, she's created a list of her favorite airports on a 5-point grading system. And Atlanta takes the gold. Please join me in welcoming Penny.
Thank you, Chloe. And I know the Atlanta is a controversial opinion, so you can talk to me afterwards if you need the details. So, I want to first start by asking you the following two questions. What are engineers and who do they work for? Are they scientists, creators, inventors, designers, or all of the above? Would they work for the government, a business, a university, themselves, or once again, all of the above? I want to convince you that it doesn't really matter what our definition of an engineer is or who they may be employed by. What truly matters is that engineers work for and with communities of all people throughout their engineering tenure to ensure that their decisions, their designs, their architectures have those communities' best interests at heart. Now, you may stop me right here and say, well, Penny, this is not exactly a very fresh revelation. And to that I say, well, you may not be wrong. We are still a long way from fully realizing it. There are many examples within our everyday life, many already documented by the big activists, authors, professors, etc. of our era that show how some engineering designs, although perhaps intended for a good cause, contribute to the systematic oppression and marginalization of all people who do not fit the mold that society has deemed the normal. Let's consider the dreaded airport security. Many of us may dread it for nuisance reasons. I know I do. Just another hassle to go through in order to get to our final destinations. But for many others, it is more than just a simple inconvenience. Black women are frequently singled out for hair pat-downs. And while it may be easy to place all the blame to the TSA agents, it is the full-body scanner machines that easily get triggered by certain hairstyles. And there are many more examples using these machines alone that show how disproportionately only certain people are affected, such as trans individuals, people with disabilities, and people who wear head wraps for religious reasons. But what can we, the engineers, do to put an end to this perpetual injustice? Like for us, I'm not the first and the last person to ask this question. Back in 2015, at the Allied Media Conference, not too far from here, in Detroit, the design justice principles were established. At this conference, community organizers, designers, artists, technologists all came together and asked that very same question, leading to the creation of the Design Justice Network. The design justice principles were then inscribed in an online living document under 10 core principles. But for tonight, I want to just specifically focus on 3. And so for our first one, we center and prioritize the community who is directly impacted by our design. I want to examine this principle using the New Orleans levees and floodwalls that failed during the Hurricane Katrina disaster. New Orleans uses a system of levees and floodwalls administered by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to protect the city from coastal and riverine floods. During Hurricane Katrina, which had weakened to Category 3 by the time it made landfall in Louisiana, several levees failed, some at far below water levels that they had been built to withstand. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers took some responsibility for the flooding, saying that the reason the levees failed was because they were built in a disjointed fashion and using outdated data. One of the key points mentioned in reports on the aftermath was that engineers did not take into account the soil quality underneath New Orleans on which the levees and floodwalls were built. Now, there's not truly a way to say what could have happened if this principle was used. Perhaps if the engineers had involved the community in the design process, the course of the disaster's events may have been different. But what I do know is that people know the land they live on. Some New Orleans residents may have even known the quality of the soil underneath their houses through gardening or other means. If the engineers had simply asked the community to be directly involved, perhaps their use of outdated data in their modeling could have been fixed, long before the hurricane struck. And yes, that would have meant that more work needed to be done. Engineers would have needed to put their egos aside, prioritize the community's safety, and accept and admit that their designs were simply not perfect. And for our second principle, we have everyone is an expert based on their own lived experiences and can contribute to a design process. For this principle, I want to use my own research as an example. I'm working on creating a completely implantable sensor that can interface with hearing aids and cochlear implants to replace their external microphones. There are many benefits to a completely implantable auditory prosthesis, some being safety, ease of use, and of course, aesthetics. During my now 4-something years working in this project, I've had the opportunity to talk to physicians, scientists, audiologists, and I've also had the chance to meet some current cochlear implant and hearing aid users, with perhaps a notable mention being my own grandpa, who actually refused to accept that he even needed a hearing aid because it would have made him look too old. But apart from all of that, as I was writing this speech, I started reflecting on the fact that I really should do more to include people with these lived experiences in my own research. As of course, who else is better to include than the people who currently rely on hearing aids and cochlear implants, the people who can easily tell me those devices' pitfalls and benefits, and the people who would eventually become the target users for my own designs. And for our last one for the night, before designing, we look at what already exists, and we honor and uplift traditional, indigenous, and local knowledge and practices. Basically, there is no need to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes it might be tempting to design something fancy, but if the community we are designing for already has a solution that meets their needs, then it might just be worth going to that community and asking them what works best for them, and maybe how we can help uplift their current solution. As I said, we can always design something cool, but if the design is not helpful or useful, then what is really its purpose? Let's take a positive example for this last principle. Let's consider the utensils that people with Parkinson's disease use. Parkinson's disease causes motor symptoms. These can include tremors, stiffness, slowness of movement, and poor balance and coordination. These symptoms can make it difficult for people with Parkinson's disease to carry out everyday tasks, such as holding a knife or a fork. The community has found that using weighted utensils help with the tremors, and having a handle or a strap helps with a better grip. Some of the newer designs are building on those previous designs. Some are using smart technology in the handle that can distinguish between voluntary movement and hand tremors and can actually help counteract those hand tremors. All these specially designed items may help people with Parkinson's disease maintain their independence and improve their quality of life. Now, all these principles that I've described can actually be used in many other fields beyond just engineering. But as a mechanical engineer myself, I am curious, how many engineers in the audience have actually been taught about these principles? Because in my experience, I didn't even get to learn of their existence until I was well into my graduate school education. In my opinion, anyone who is studying to become an engineer should learn of these principles starting from their undergraduate years. Incorporating the design justice principles in those early days fundamental courses would, 1, stress their importance in the engineering field, and 2, allow students time to learn how to use them effectively, because it is much easier said than done, unfortunately. Just as science, mathematics, and coding are fundamental pillars taught early in engineering, so too should justice, accessibility, and community engagement be woven into the fabric of our educational system. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. Next, we have Iris Yuning Yi. a master's student in the Department of Information Science and in the School of Information. Her talk, titled "What Makes You Curious About That Exchange Student?" shares the stories of two exchange students, one whose new environment is a more homogenous culture versus another whose new environment is a more diverse culture. Iris suggests, based on personal experience, that curiosity is practiced less in a more diverse environment, while better preserved in a homogenous environment. With people different from us, Iris encourages us to just be curious, sincere, and understanding. Some fun facts about Iris are that she has perfect pitch, and she's done the world's highest bungee jumping. Give it up for Iris.
Good evening. Thanks everybody for being here first. I want to start this talk by showing, this is a picture of my high school. And I grew up in the northern part of China in a city called Tianjin. As you can tell from the picture, we all look Asian, and we are actually all Asian. My best friend's in high school's name was Ray. She is the calmest person I've ever seen in my entire life. I've never seen her screaming, heard her screaming, except for one time when she pushed through the whole classroom, ran to me, and screamed and shake was like, "Iris, did you know downstairs he's so cute. His hair is curly and brown, and he's always smiling." I was happy but surprised at the same time. My high school was never animal friendly. Without thinking too much, I was already dragged down 2 floors by Ray. When we arrived there, Ray was still screaming, "Did you know that a German exchange student will be with us for the whole year?" Oh, it's German exchange student. My dog petting dream suddenly faded. But another German culture learning dream rose up from the moment. A week later, Alex was introduced by my school principal in front of 2,000 students in my high school in the school auditorium on the podium, and he was awarded a commemorative coin. Students were so eager and excited. I could tell. They invited Alex to their home for dinner. They showed Alex around campus. They took him for the local community. They translate and share gossip with him. Everyone tried their best to make Alex feel at home. Alex, on the other hand, also hosted weekly German learning lessons. I still remember Deutschland is another name for Germany, and I still remember that Germany, this country name, originated from the Latin language. Fast forward to college. I got an opportunity to study abroad in UC Berkeley during my junior year. Now I was the Alex in the classroom. First day of my class, I thought I was going to be introduced by my professor to 200 students in my UC Berkeley class, and I practiced my self-introduction 50 plus times. But the only thing the professor said in the class was, "Okay, this is highly likely the last accounting class you're going to take, but grades will not be curved, and attendance is required." Wait, they don't care about exchange student here? I thought to myself. No, that self-introduction that I rehearsed 50 plus times never got a chance to be presented. From these two stories, I have shared with you how Alex experienced as an exchange student in a more homogenous culture like China, and how I experienced as an exchange student here in the melting pot we call the United States. I felt Alex belonged to my Chinese high school, where he was the sole outlier than I did in the United States. But why was that the case? I think it boils down to curiosity. When we were young, when we were kids, we asked our parents questions every single day. Yet when we grow up, as we learn more, we ask less questions. Will Stoll, in his book, The Science of Storytelling, proposes a letter N to describe curiosity. It is at its weakest when people have no idea about the answer to a question, and when people are entirely convinced that I think I know it all. The students in my Chinese high school who had never been exposed to a German culture were so curious about it. American students who have diversity all around them recognize assimilation as the norm and are less sensitive about a new culture. Okay, I want to kind of switch gears here and play a game. Are we ready for a game? Oh, okay, let's do a game. When I switch to the next slide, shout out the first color you see, okay? Oh, wow, okay. A lot of yellows. Blue, cool. Amazing blue, all fair. Okay, another round. Next slide, shout out the first color you see this time. Oh, okay. Oh, I did not even get the chance to catch. I saw a gray, I heard yellow, I heard green. So a lot of different colors. I felt Alex was just like the first yellow dot in the first picture, while I was just a random color dot in the second picture. It's undeniable that the dots in the first picture is much less diverse than the second one. Sure, the second society, multicolored dots society, is much more diverse. But individuals are no longer someone you can pick out of the crowd. We are just random dots. I am, you are, and we are. Diversity dilutes its effect, and inclusion is not on side of it. What I mean by that is on each one of us to remain curious about people's differences. It's on each one of us to remain curious about people's cultures. It's only when we learn more without assumptions so people can retain their individuality without feeling excluded from the diversity. It is on us. How would Alex's experience have been different if my high school and my Chinese classmate Shannon, just because he doesn't look like us? How would Alex feel if we treated him like we had nothing to learn from him, but he was actually so unique in this environment? I can't stop but think, when did we stop asking questions like when we were little? When did we stop being curious toward the dot sitting next to us, standing in front of us, and walking past us? I can't stop but think and seeing in myself, when did I stop caring about another Alex? From when I don't care about another Alex anymore? From when I take diversity for granted? From when I see we are just different colored dots and I stop asking questions? Okay, curiosity is the catalyst of inclusion, and difference is never the destination. Now I have the stage and I have your attention. I want to wrap up my talk with that self-introduction I never got the chance to present in my UC Berkeley class. Hello, I'm Iris. I grew up in the northern part of China in a city called Tianjin. This is my first time ever lived abroad, and I'm really excited to explore the Bay Area. As you can tell, Chinese is my first language, and I also want to share with you my Chinese name, which I'm really proud of. Ye Yuning. I tend to be really nervous when pronouncing my name because I only heard my full name when I did something wrong, and my parents caught that. So even for those people who has the same spelling of Yuningyye, it can look something different. My grandpa and my dad worked together towards my name. It means to give me peace in my life. For other people with the same spelling, it can look like something like this or this, both. So the first one means universe is blessed with peace. The second one means raindrops freeze. They are all unique. English spelling of Chinese name dilutes the meaning of all of the Chinese names. Just like I remember Alexander is the German pronunciation for Alex, I hope you remember Ye Yuning is Iris's Chinese name. Just like I remember Deutschland from German culture, I hope you remember the arts of characters and the arts of Chinese names from Chinese culture. Even you don't remember anything, you remember we got panic when we heard full name from our parents. Stay curious, and thank you.
Thank you, Iris. Next, we have Kati Lebioda. She's a Ph.D. in higher education. Katie's talk, titled Doing With in Participatory Research, is about her experience doing a participatory action research project with 18 other racially and ethnically minoritized students. She advocates for how, even though doing with can be tricky in unexpected ways, the infinite possibilities in our relationships also can lead us to something really special in the end. Some interesting facts about Kati are that she has several pen pals, one of which has lasted for 17 years and counting. And also, people say she has a green thumb, but her secret is she forgets to water her plants. Please welcome Kati.
Thank you, Chloe. I study higher education, which is, I'm in college and I study college. But what does that mean to study higher education? For me, I use a method called participatory action research to look at how institutional diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives do or do not impact the experiences of students of color. If you're unfamiliar, participatory research aims to bring the folks that other researchers might call subjects or participants into the research process. So the research moves beyond doing on or for to really working with these communities. The semantic difference between these prepositions is kind of at the heart of my talk tonight, so let's spend a beat here. On. I can put flowers on a table. I can do research on the experiences of students of color. The primary agent, in this case me, performs an action on an object. For. I can buy flowers for my friend. I can do research for students of color. For example, to improve campus climates at predominantly white institutions. The primary agent is still me, but now things seem more positive. I'm doing something nice for my friend, or I'm researching to do good on behalf of communities I care about. The people I'm doing for are on my mind, but it's a lot of me making assumptions about what they want. With. I can buy flowers with my friend. I can do research with students of color. Now there are multiple agents doing the action, me and my friend buying flowers, me and the students I work with doing research. Because we're doing things together, they have a say in what happens. It's not just me making assumptions anymore. In doing with, me becomes we. On, for, with. Is everyone with me? Yes. Perfect. Tonight, I want to share with you a story about centering relationships in research. It can actually be a bit more tricky than it sounds, but doing with can also be really beautiful. All right, so real talk. I was a bit lucky when it came to my dissertation. I studied colleges and student experiences. The University of Michigan just so happened to be preparing for a strategic plan around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Part of this plan was talking to students, faculty, and staff. I went to one of these student town halls and I said, how can I get involved in the DEI plan? The answer I was given was, you are already involved as a leader of your student organization. So at that time, I was a Ph.D. student, a mom of 2 toddlers, during a global pandemic. So I was doing a lot of things, but you might notice leading a student organization wasn't one of them. The event was scripted, so there wasn't a lot of back and forth for me to be like, and if I'm not? And so, although it wasn't intentional, the message I received was, unless you are a student leader, there is no room in this process for you. It was clear to me that the DEI plan was going to be missing some voices. What if I got together with other students of color and we made digital stories about our experiences with DEI on campus? Maybe, if heard by the right people, these stories could impact the DEI plan. And off I went. The thing you have to remember is that graduate students are preparing to be experts. We think a lot about everything. We design these protocols for the institutional review board. We think about sample parameters and recruitment strategies. We decide who is and is not included, but also how many. Like, should I cap different groups of people so I don't have too many of one type? Like it's Pokemon or something. Basically, researchers make a lot of plans. But when we try to control all these factors and variables, our relationships become extractive, transactional. Yes, we hope our research leads to scientific advancement or reduces inequality for society. But what about the people in our studies? How do we get to with? What I discovered very quickly is that it can be really hard to break out of these roles, like I'm the researcher and you're the participant. It was easy to find students who had thoughts about DEI. But what I noticed was the students I was working with kept saying things like, is this okay? Or, this is a bit off topic, but, or, well, to help Katie with her thesis, I'll probably tell this story. In the beginning, it was easy for me to be with. Don't worry about me, I said. I'll find something to write about. What story do you want to tell? Halfway through our 9 sessions, it became clear that the students I was working with did not want to engage with the DEI plan. They were tired of trauma dumping. Collectively, they had countless examples of times where they needed to share deficit-based narratives in order to get their needs met, whether that was funding or space or exceptions to a policy. They did not trust that the institution could or would change. I could have tried to double down on my original vision of using digital stories as a counter-narrative to the DEI plan. But instead, I went all in on being with these people. I told them, you decide what happens in this process, and what, if anything, happens to your stories afterwards. I'm down for the ride. And off we went. I pivoted my dissertation. My dissertation is now about doing participatory research. Yes, that's right. I am in college, studying college, and I research doing research. But I have to admit to you, even after I reframed my project so that all I had to do was be with these people, it was hard. I had so much anxiety about the list of questions that I wanted to ask, but I wouldn't have time for. I could feel that on and that for creeping in. Whereas before I was reassuring my students, now I was reminding myself, don't worry, you'll find something to write about. We matters more than me. And let me tell you, it was definitely worth it. But now the trick is, how do I capture our experience together? How do I capture our experience together and do enough justice so that all of you know that more work like this is needed? I could tell you about Wendy's family made of coworkers who sneak her chocolate without a word, or about why Amani gets queasy before speaking up in class, or about how Kira's Aji tells her stories as they lay beneath lavender-scented sheets that help Kira feel connected to her ancestral homeland. Seeing you in all that that is heals me too. My students and I decided, instead of putting our stories in front of top administrators like I had wanted, that we would create more spaces for students to share their stories. I had wanted the right people to hear the stories of students of color. And looking back, I think they did. In these last few moments tonight, I want to thank the students I worked with for trusting me and walking this journey with me. I couldn't have done this without you. And to everyone else with me here tonight, my wish for you is that you can find some way to be with people when you leave this room. There are infinite possibilities in our relationships, and you never know what will happen if you go along for the ride. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. All right. Our sixth speaker of the evening is Julianne Armijo. She's a Ph.D. student in the School of Nursing and a family nurse practitioner. In her talk titled What It's Like to Be a Nurse with Bipolar Disorder, Julianne describes what it's like to live with bipolar disorder. She provides a candid perspective about being both a patient and a healthcare provider. By sharing her struggles and successes, she hopes that she can debunk misconceptions about this misunderstood mental illness. Through her research, she will seek answers about how not only to live, but thrive as a nurse with bipolar disorder. But please be advised that Julianne's speech contains brief mentions of sensitive topics, including statistics on suicide and depression. And so the listener discretion is advised, and we encourage anyone who might find these topics troubling to exercise self-care and seek support if needed. Some interesting facts about Julianne is that she's learning how to speak Icelandic, and she's a licensed falconer who works with wild birds of prey. Please welcome Julianne.
The Starry Night is one of the most recognizable paintings in the world, and it's one of Vincent van Gogh's most celebrated works. But when I say Vincent van Gogh's name, what else comes to mind? It's okay to be honest. Is it the visual of a severed ear? Evidence of a tortured artist? His birthday is March 30th. Now, why do I know this? I'm a nurse, I'm not an art historian. And why is it important to my talk today? It happens to be World Bipolar Day, as in bipolar disorder. Now, when I say bipolar disorder, what or who immediately comes to mind? Maybe you thought of a famous actor or actress or musician. There have been plenty that have had well-publicized and sensationalized breakdowns, like Kanye West. Maybe you thought of a TV or a movie character like Ozark, Silver Linings Playbook, or Homeland. During their time on our screens, they have very obvious, usually public meltdowns. But what about the rest of us? Those of us who don't live in those extremes all the time. Those of us who experience our symptoms in silence. Did anybody think of University of Michigan President Dr. Santa Ono? He's been very outspoken and candid about his experiences with bipolar disorder. How about Ph.D. student or registered nurse? That's me in the marshmallow suit circa 2014, by the way. For many years, I worked as a bedside nurse in the intensive care units. And when I started off, I began right at the bottom of the nursing food chain, which meant I had to work rotating day and night shifts and night shifts. Now, has anyone here ever worked a rotating or a night shift or known somebody who has? You can do a show of hands. Oh, wow. How did you all feel, or how did they feel when they were working those shifts? Not great. I'm guessing the core issue was sleep. Trouble sleeping for those without mental health struggles is tough enough, but for those with bipolar disorder, it can be catastrophic. In the simplest terms, bipolar disorder is a cyclical, extreme shifting of moods and perception. Now, everyone here is familiar with changing moods in ourselves, in others. It's part of the human experience. But imagine your moods, your worst moods, holding you hostage for days, weeks, even months on end. My mental health struggles began when I was 14. But working these rotating and night shifts was like adding gasoline to a bonfire. My sleep devolved into an utter mess, and my mind began to change in ways that I couldn't understand or control, and I had no idea why. Why can't I sleep for days? Why are my thoughts racing? Why am I crawling out of my skin? Why are the trees sparkling? And why have I suddenly decided to leave my nursing job and start an organic cranberry farm in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan? I don't even like cranberries. I think she might, though. Why were my thoughts so jangled and discordant? And then let's fast forward a week later. Why did I suddenly cancel all my plans? Why did I suddenly ghost all these new acquaintances that I had just made? And why, for the life of me, could I not get myself up off the couch, having to call into work sick with the flu? All of these symptoms I just described were a constellation of mania, hypomania, and depression. And these cycles continue over and over and over again. It took me well over 10 years to come to a correct diagnosis. And whereas a nurse who is supposed to have the answers turned to find not only answers, but solace. The answer was that there were no answers. But when we finally have our diagnosis in hand, what do we do with it? Through the power of proper medications and comprehensive mental health care, those of us with bipolar disorder can not only function but thrive, harnessing our creative energy and enthusiasm into great projects, like doing a King Talk. But there's a gap in knowledge. Major depression, the type that doesn't have the cranberry highs, and anxiety have been well studied in registered nurses. But their more functionally debilitating counterparts, the bipolar disorders, exist only as sparse case studies in the literature. Bipolar disorder is covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act, which ensures reasonable health or reasonable work accommodations. But the nurses that I know with bipolar disorder who have filed for these protections still feel unprotected. And why is that? Nursing is a seniority-based job, like many jobs, which means you paid your dues, which means that you're eligible for things like better vacations, bonuses, and including better work shifts. Now, on average, one of the most coveted nursing seniority benefits is getting to work a day shift. Now, in my discussions with sleep and bipolar disorder experts, their number one recommendation for workers with bipolar disorder is to, you guessed it, avoid nights and rotating shifts. So imagine, you're a brand new nurse, fresh out of nursing school, you know that you have bipolar disorder, and you do all the things, jump through all the hoops, and you're ready to start your first shift as a new nurse on a day shift. But think about all the rest of those nurses on that unit you were just hired onto. And what are they thinking about this new interloper who has not paid their dues and is now taking one of their coveted day shift positions? It's like painting a gigantic bullseye on your back. And even those of us who have toughed out these rough schedules and have gained seniority still fear giving up our diagnosis, because through words and actions, we observe our coworkers, and they don't necessarily say the nicest things about those with mental illness. It's not unreasonable to think that they would think the same things about us, especially those of us who've had to spend time in the hospital for it. But why should our colleagues care? Why should society care? And why should you care? Bipolar disorder has the highest suicide rate of all psychiatric conditions, and it's approximately 20 to 30 times higher than the general population. 20 to 30 times higher. Now, couple this with the fact that registered nurses have an above average suicide risk, and together, this theoretically puts registered nurses with bipolar disorder at an exceptional risk of suicide. Now, that is a great reason to care about those who have made a career of caring for others. Through my research, I want to find out how many nurses are out there living with bipolar disorder. I want to find out their demographics, their experiences. I want to find out everything. Because as a researcher, I want to turn that information into action. I want to find a way to help keep the bullseye off somebody's back. If our job puts us at risk of developing asthma, we don't question it. We don't base somebody's worth on it. We don't judge them. Their workplace provides them a respirator to help protect them. So why do we treat mental illness any differently when perhaps all we need is a mental equivalent of a respirator? Both of these conditions are entirely treatable and even possibly preventable. In healthcare, we are expected to be on our game at all times. But to be on our game, we need the backing of our team being our colleagues and our employer, so that we can win. And what is winning in healthcare? We know what winning is for the Wolverines. But what is winning in healthcare? To me, winning means that when you're at work, you're at your professional best, and you're able to give all of yourself to every patient who walks through that door, many of them on the worst day of their lives. So the next time someone says bipolar disorder, I challenge you to think about it a little differently. Think about it a little bit more like asthma, a little bit less like ticking time bomb, a little less severed ear, and a little more starry night. Thank you.
Thank you, Julianne. Last but not least, we have Juliana Loera Wiggins. She's a Ph.D. candidate in the Department of American Culture and Program of Latina and Latino Studies. Get ready to laugh, because Juliana's talk, titled "Our Laughter is a Symphony," will address how we can use humor as a tool to process our experiences as a fish out of water. As a practitioner and researcher of stand-up comedy, Juliana understands how humor has a place in every aspect of our lives. Individually, we carry multitudes of expression and markers of difference, even among folks who share our identities. This is the dissonance she wishes to address, or the jangling discords we sound. But there is one bridge across difference that corresponds to how we make ourselves seen, heard, and legible that she calls laughter as a symphony. Two interesting facts about Juliana are that she plays bass in a band, and she's been playing rugby for almost 10 years. Please welcome to the stage, Juliana.
So, I am Mexican American. I know I look like an outdoorsy white, but the mustache I've been growing since the 3rd grade would say otherwise. I'll admit I wanted to try stand-up comedy because I like to laugh, but I love to make people laugh. There's no better feeling than watching someone's face crack open into a smile and hearing the sound of their laughter. And selfishly, my own will join in as well. But as a researcher and a comedian, studying comedy has made me make a deeper commitment to myself and stay true to my identity. My scholarship is inspired by growing up in a small, rural, Northern California town as one of the few Mexican Americans and people of color. Luckily, I was raised looking up to numerous strong women in my life, including my sister, my mother, my grandmothers, and Dora the Explorer. How can she afford to travel so much? I was growing up in a home where if I had fun today, I can't have fun tomorrow. But this little Latina can pick up her backpack and walk out the door with no consequences. Now that you're in the mood for laughing, I want you to think about your own laughter. Where in your body does it start, and to where does it bubble up to? Now I want you to consider how we can use laughter and humor as tools for social change. What if I told you that laughter can be a radical act of resistance? As comedians, when we sit down to write our material, we often begin with a moment that left us feeling embarrassed or confused. A comedy writing handbook calls this exercise a fish out of water. Who or what made you feel out of place? And write down in detail what happened. This exercise certainly gives you perspective, and for folks who inhabit marginalized identities and conditions, this can definitely turn your pain into a punchline, and luckily, I have a lot of material. For example, the bit that I opened up with about being an outdoorsy white was actually a comment I received from someone after I had performed in a comedy show. I typically welcome advice, but the degree this person went to would be what some might call unsolicited. This person commented that I did not look Mexican enough or sound Mexican enough to deliver my material. They added that my racial ambiguity didn't make me suitable for something like comedy. And then they called me an outdoorsy white. And at the moment, I had absolutely no idea how to respond. But I'll admit, images like this, or like this, did come into my head. But if we're gonna be real here, I wouldn't be in any of these photos because I'd be at home washing my brother's chones. But I do remember how my body felt in that moment at someone questioning my racial identity. I felt dizzy and a little sick, and even while I was trying to go to bed that night, the descriptor, outdoorsy white, outdoorsy white, outdoorsy white, kept repeating over and over in my head. Until a light bulb went off, and I wrote down in my phone, outdoorsy white. This person had given me the gift of a punchline in a totally inconsiderate and racially insensitive way, but a punchline nonetheless. The pain of being called an ethnic fraud had turned into a tickle. And this is a pretty simple yet effective way of calling out someone's perception of me. It's a strategy that can resist what someone should look like and what they're capable of. I love researching humor and comedy because we can take moments like this and play with them in a million different ways. Comedy also offers us ways that we can inform audiences. We can also readjust your social world as comedians. And we can add truth to a perspective. Yaqui Chicana scholar Yolanda Broyles Gonzalez once wrote that laughter has a social importance to the oppressed. When we point at the skewed logic of hate, we can take away its power. With humor, we can turn our fears and our insecurities into a punchline. And for those of us who belong to marginalized communities, we can take that painful stitch in our side and turn it into a tickle. Just think about how laughter and humor, when used as tools for social justice, have the potential to lead to action. Just as laughter moves the diaphragm, it can also move your mind. And so I had an idea, why not bring my research to the University of Michigan? And this idea was really motivated by this feeling of not seeing enough Latinx folks in one room. We are, after all, only 8% of the student body here on campus, and Latinas specifically make up less than 1% of comedians and doctoral holders in the country. When I told my parents I was making it in the 1%, this isn't exactly what they had in mind. But thanks to the Department of American Culture, the Center for World Performance Studies, and the Program of Latina and Latino Studies, I produced a Latina comedy show right here on campus for free. I invited Latina comedians who have participated in my doctoral research and who I have also performed with all across the Midwest. On the night of the show, when I walked onto the stage to introduce myself as one of the hosts and MCs for the evening, my breath was taken away. Every seat was filled, the show had already started, and people were still walking into the theater, trying to find a seat. What followed was nearly 2 hours of Latinas making fun of their bodily functions, humorously describing their relationships with their family and loved ones, and expressing love and appreciation for the diversity that exists within our community. That feeling of not seeing enough of us turned into a precious sentiment of abundance. And I wasn't the only one who felt this way. A few days following the show, a student contacted me. And in their message, they said that it is common to feel like the only Latinx person in the room, and it's difficult to find communities here on campus. They added that at the comedy show, they felt the most naturally Latinx that they've ever felt at this university. And it especially warmed my heart when they shared the following with me. You brought our true natural culture to us and gave us a safe space to reconnect to it. This student felt like they were given the freedom to laugh at the most beautiful and difficult parts of being Latinx. And they felt the impact of seeing Latinas perform experiences similar to their own. Humor allows us to respond to the moments that made us feel powerless. At times, we are made to feel different by systems that weren't built with us in mind. But when marginalized voices speak out, we can set the record straight. We can offer solutions for more inclusivity. And we can also explore the ways that humor can quiet the dissonance around us, and we can soften it with our laughter. Although we can't all be explorers like Dora. Thank you, that's my time. Give it up for your featured speakers tonight. And for your host, Chloe Luyette.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. That concludes our 7th annual King Talks. Let's take one more moment. All our speakers stand. Give them another round of applause. We hope that you've enjoyed each other's interpretations, or each of their interpretations of the event's theme. I've really enjoyed mentoring all of them, and recordings of the talks you heard tonight will be available soon online, but in the meantime, you can watch previous year's King Talks on the Rackam website. But there are refreshments right outside those doors, I believe, and thank you. Have a wonderful evening.